Welcome back, everyone. This is Radio Free Market, and we're with Dr. Guido Hulsmann. And, Guido, we were just talking about how the third harbinger of liberty, as you call it, of deflation, is that it wipes out debt, but not equity.
That is right. Let me give you an example to show that in an inflationary environment, there's a very strong incentive to go into debt, whereas the same would not hold true in a deflationary environment. So if you expect all prices to increase, therefore also your monetary revenue to increase, you have a very strong incentive to go into debt right now, for example, to buy a home. And this is what virtually everybody does today, not only in the United States, but also in Western Europe. And this is a perfectly rational strategy to do. And you go into debt now, you take out whatever, $300,000, and you pay whatever, $15,000 or $20,000 as a debt service per year. And at the beginning, maybe your revenue is not particularly high. Maybe you just have a $60,000, so it's somewhat hard on family finances. It's almost 30%. But then as you go along and there's inflation, ever more money is pumped into the economy. So all prices go up, but your revenue will also rise. So even if you do the same work as before, let's say you're not a particularly smart or ambitious person, I mean, for doing the same work in 20 years or in 30 years, you will earn just $120,000 just because everybody spends much more money. So now, out of $120,000, the debt service of $20,000, of course, much lighter than before, right? And so everybody anticipates this, and therefore goes into debt. Whereas our great-grandfathers, working at the beginning of the 20th century, when we barely had any inflation at all, but rather a deflationary environment, were first accumulating savings, didn't spend them right away. And once they had enough saved, they were buying a house. It would have been suicidal for them to go into debt. So you have all this accumulation of equity. That's very sound basis, very sound finance. You're standing with both feet on financial rock bottom, and then you buy the goods that you need.
I love this particular point. People have asked me if they should get into debt if they're anticipating higher inflation. And I tell them, well, the one thing that you're not thinking about is whether or not you're going to continue to have cash flow. Because if you suddenly have your cash flow interrupted and you've put all these logs of debt on your back, then that's going to be crushing, for you.
So this is another aspect, which, by the way, I did not underline very much in my book, but it's true. Right? I mean, as long as the inflationary period is stable and the economy runs by and large smoothly, so you have no interruption of revenue, it works out. But in a way, of course, it's almost like gambling. It's a little gambling, right? We are always speculating that you might earn a higher revenue in the future. So this is one of the character distorting influences. That
actually, I wasn't going to bring this up just now, but that is one of the things that is quite obvious about inflation is that it does induce people to take on an inflationary psychology. Or, excuse me, a speculative psychology. And
but it's an inflationary. So I'm very glad for this expression.
Okay. So the fourth harbinger of liberty is that it decentralizes the financial decision-making and makes banks, firms, and individuals more prudent and self-reliant than they would have been under inflation.
Right. Under inflation, we have a system that is based on central banks and the ability of central banks to refinance commercial banks. If you have a strong deflationary environment, it's not worth the while for banks to issue that much money, or their ability to issue credit is curtailed. But then they don't need the assistance of a central bank. They don't need a system of immaterial fiat money underlying the system, so they are much more self-reliant. Also much more in touch with their customer, right? The relative importance for them of their customer increases relatively to the importance of assistance from the central bank.
Right. So I listed the next two as what I consider to be actually most important, but I just see them as conjoined. And so the fifth and the sixth are deflation eradicates the rechanneling of incomes that result from the monopoly privileges of central banks. It thus destroys the economic basis of the false elites and obliges them to become true elites rather quickly or abdicate and make way for new entrepreneurs and other social leaders. I like that. Yeah. Abdicate rather quickly. That's very cute.
Yeah. The idea is that in a market economy, you can reach a position of eminence only to the extent that you provide service to your fellow human beings. So if you're a business leader, it's because you have demonstrated your ability to provide service to others. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have an inflationary system, then there's also another factor that brings you to a position of eminence, to power, namely simply the friendship or the alliance with those who create money out of nothing. Mm-hmm. How do you, again, in a market economy, if people pay you, they pay you out of their own money that they have earned with the sweat of their brow, so then themselves can spend money on you only to the extent that they themselves have provided services to others. Mm-hmm. In an inflationary monetary system in which banks and central banks can create money out of nothing, they didn't have to provide any service to anybody else. So it's just out of their personal arbitrary friendship or favoritism and so on that they give you this assistance. You're no longer a true social leader.
Well, this is really great. Let me tell you, folks, we're going to have to take another break. But when we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Hulsmann, is deflation primarily a political problem? So don't give me a quick answer. I'll be right back. We'll be right back after the break. And so this is Radio Free Market, and I'm your host, Michael McKay. And please stay with us. We'll be right back in just a minute.